back to Different Strokes for Different Folks. My name is Vaughn, and I'm your host. And today we are joined by Abraham Rumery, who had a uh, brain aneurysm, and it sounds like a TBI as well. Welcome on.
Thank you.
So, I usually like to start with asking my guests to let us know what happened.
Okay, well, here we go. I'll tell you first. I had some sort of aneurysm in my brainstem. The doctors told me it was either an AVM or maybe cavernous angioma, which is a CA, or I don't know if there was anything else they said it might have been. But they were kind of on the fence, but anyhow, I moved on with my life and kept up with my recovery and
Hmm.
stayed with myself and stayed true to myself. And it left me in a coma for 2 weeks. And then after my coma, I was in, I don't know, a recovery bed at the hospital, and I was there for about a week or so.
Hmm.
And at this point, I could not do anything, move my arms, my legs. I heard in your podcast yesterday you talked about walking barefoot in the grass. That's something I don't know if I can do. I understand the difficulty in that one.
Hmm.
I'm pretty true to myself in my recovery process. I started volunteering, and my mother got me into some excellent programs when I was still young. This happened when I was 17. This happened on the third day of my senior year. It was just a regular day at school. There's some argument about what actually went on that afternoon, but after about dinner time, I ended up going over to my friend's house to go water skiing. And while I was at my friend's house water skiing, I was sitting on the dock waiting for them to get all reset in the boat and get the line right and circle it and move around and all that stuff. And
Hmm.
I just had this really weird sensation in the back of my head. I can't say it was a headache. It was obviously a blood vessel bursting in my brainstem. But yeah, I was not sure of what was going on. So, and I was sitting there, and it was painful. And my friends came around in the boat and I got in the boat under my own power, and we went back to shore. We were on the dock, so it's only about what 20-25 feet from shore.
Hmm.
And so we get back, and I go to get out of the boat, and I just lost everything. I didn't It's not like I felt like I was falling. I lost my balance. I fell over backwards, but it wasn't like I didn't have that dizzy feeling. I just There wasn't anything left. And but I was still conscious at this time. My friend picked me up. I was kind of a little guy in high school, and my friend picked me up and carried me up to his mother's car, and we sat there and talked. And I was throwing up pretty bad at this point,
Hmm.
and his parents had called the ambulance, and we were sitting there in the car talking. He was trying to, talk to me and keep me level-headed and sane, and all that. And I didn't know what was going on. I knew it was bad. I knew it wasn't good. I don't,
Hmm.
other than that, I don't know. And the ambulance got there, and they strapped me on the backboard and all that happy that the ambulance people do, what the paramedics, excuse me, what
Hmm.
the paramedics do. And then I had, I actually, at that point, when I was strapped to the backboard, they put an oxygen mask on me. And I wasn't done throwing up at this point, and I had an oxygen mask on, and I
Oh.
threw up in my oxygen mask, which is not very good. And I was actually in the back of they they had put me in the back of the ambulance and stepped out to talk to my friend's family for a moment.
Hmm.
And this is when I threw up in my oxygen mask, and me, I'm sitting there, I don't know, going belly up, and I somehow reached up and moved my oxygen mask. But anyhow, I believe I may have aspirated some of that because I developed pneumonia
Mhm.
within 24 hours, and they were giving me vancomycin for that, which I'm allergic to. So they were pumping me full of a drug I was allergic to for 2 weeks. So it's hard to say well, like what damage came from the rupture, and what damage came from that, because that could be pretty damaging. I mean, being in
Mhm.
anaphylactic shock for 2 weeks straight,
Yeah.
can't imagine that's very good for the system.
Mhm.
But anyhow, and then I was in the coma and the recovery unit, and I went to rehab right after that. I did everything I could in rehab. I did like regular exercises, walking exercises. I remember I almost immediately I started aqua therapy, which I'm very excited about because that like takes all the weight out of your body so you can actually do stuff. And I stayed with the aqua therapy for very many years after that, and I enjoyed that. But
Mhm.
I've always enjoyed. I grew up at the lake. I had a single mother, and she had to work, so the summers were spent at the lake. I was probably there all day.
Mhm.
But I was also a kid of the '80s, so you could do that kind of thing. Nowadays, probably not so much. That's probably
Mhm.
not a very good idea to leave your child somewhere. Well, it's a lot safer, and I'm up in Maine, so I'm not
Mhm.
way up in Maine, but
Yeah.
I'm up in Maine. But my recovery, when I was pretty amazed in my recovery, but I feel like my recovery had a lot to do with my mom. She is very good at showing me tough love. I mean, she's there for me, but she didn't have the best family growing up, and but I've always been able to understand her lessons, even though they may not be perfect. They
Mhm.
have made me very strong as a person. Like my recovery, this happened when I was 17. When I was 18, this I'm pretty impressed with this actually.
Mhm.
When I was 18, it was probably a year after I was in the Special Olympics, and I did a few different swimming events, and I placed very, very well in those. And we didn't have a swim team at my school, so I
Mhm.
was impressed with myself that I was able to keep up with everybody. I placed very well. It was kind of like all my placings were kind of like at the back of the lead pack. I got like third. I remember one event third I missed third place by a very, very small fraction. It was like zero point zero 0.01 or zero point zero 0.02 seconds.
Mhm.
And it's because the pool was a different size. So I couldn't time it when you're doing the backstroke, they had that lane of flags right there, right before the ending. So you can
Mhm.
time how many strokes you do before you get the wall. But that was kind of thrown off by a different
Mhm.
size pool. So that's my excuse for the day. But anyhow, so that was when I was 18. I didn't do that 2 years in a row. I probably should have stayed with that. But anyhow, when I was 19, I think I may have done it in the winter when I was 18. But I did handicap skiing, which is like skiing. I've actually been skiing since I was 5 years old, so skiing is kind of second nature, I guess. I
Mhm.
don't think it's very hard, but I don't think everybody shares that opinion. And I did that handicap skiing. I did that for a couple of years, and I was going to rehab at the main center for integrated rehab, and that's where I met this gentleman, Scott Mayo. He's the CFO of that company, and he asked me to speak with him at schools, and that turned into speaking at schools to. I also spoke at the sheriff's department, and I spoke at, it was like a conference for teachers. I think it was MAP ERD or something like that. It was like the Maine Association of Health, PE, Recreation, and Dance Teachers, or Maine Teachers Association or something. But the acronym was almost MAP HERD, so it was kind of funny. And I did that for about a decade or so. So that lasted into my late 20s if I started at the beginning of my 20s. And also, probably when I was 20, 27 or 28, I forget. I just because I had gotten help through disabled skiing, I figured that I should volunteer, return the favor, volunteer, and I taught a few different kids to ski throughout that year. That was an excellent experience. I was very happy about that one.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years later, I also I enjoyed working with kids a whole lot. I helped coach a pee wee football team right here in the area. That was a whole lot of fun. I was kind of scrumming around with the kids and stuff. And then when I was 35 years old, actually it was the same year I did I coached football. I ran a 5K. But that probably took a year and a half, almost 2 years training, because because my right leg got messed up when I was in a coma. It kind of tilts, my foot tilts outward a little bit. So I had to, like, the reason I was training for so long is that I had to learn to hold that foot rigid so I would not roll my ankle.
Mm-hmm.
And that took a long time. And just getting myself healthy enough to run that. I think a 5K is what, 3.2 miles or something like that. It's hard to understand, like, how much just that little bit of rotation in the foot can throw off your whole bodily movement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone understands that until it's an issue, and
Yeah.
that's a big deal. Yeah, I'd say my foot is turned out and it's only like maybe 25 degrees. Like, usually, like, if you set your foot down and you look straight down over your knee, your toes are in line with your knee,
Mm-hmm.
right? On my right leg, my right foot sticks out to the side some. And I've never really considered it a problem, but
Mm-hmm.
it is a little bit of a problem.
So you touched on it a little bit, but what were your deficits after your aneurysm?
My deficits, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before my aneurysm, I don't know, I went to school, I hiked, I worked, I started working at 12 years old. I rode mountain bike. I played a pretty mean game of tennis. I played basketball. I played football. This I ran. I cross country skied. I don't know. I mountain climbed. I like actual climbing, like, carabiners and rock climbing. Excuse me, rock climbing. Just all that. I was very active. So it was a huge lifestyle change. I could no longer be active. In fact, I still play a lot of video games. I'm kind of lethargic, kind of sit around. I mean, I've pushed myself to do these things just so I can be happy with myself and feel like I accomplished something in life, because, my life was taken away from me at 17. I was a year from not becoming an adult, but becoming on my own, more independent. I was my mother's son still. I was looking forward to growing up, and I had played baseball my whole life from when well, not I say my whole life, sorry. I'm 42 now, and I was 17 when this happened. So I started playing baseball when I was 6 years old, and I played baseball till I was 17. Like, I remember in 8th grade and 9th grade, we also had a Babe Ruth League. And that was more in the summer, so I could play school ball and then do that over the summer. And I felt like my junior year, I was starting to really show improvements in baseball. I was excited about it for myself. I was excited about what I was doing.
Is there anything other than therapy that you feel has helped you get as far as you have in your recovery?
Oh yeah, love, believing in myself, believing, like having faith in myself, having faith in the process. I
Hmm.
just working and doing what works. Anything is possible as long if you cut it down into baby steps. Anything is possible.
What is something that what are you most proud of accomplishing post aneurysm?
Teaching kids how to ski, but it's I it's so much deeper than that. Really, it's opened my eyes. It's opened my eyes to the kindness and gentleness of people and how everybody can be an inspiration in their own way. And
What is some advice you would give to new survivors?
don't give up.
Hmm.
Believe in yourself. Have faith in yourself. You can make it work. That's
Hmm.
what I would like to project.
On
Never
a
give up.
on a scale of 0 to 100, how much would you say you've recovered?
I'd give it a strong 84.
84. Okay.
No, I don't know. That was a very random number. It could be 77. No, I don't. I'm not 100%. That's
Mhm.
not for me to decide. What's for me is going out there and doing something. If somebody asks me to do it or if I want to do it, believe in myself and do it. I try not to think about how much I can or can't. It's more about how much I want to.
So, how did your brain injury affect your social life?
Um, well, that's deep. My social life, I'd say at first, well, mostly it hurts because I was very active. I had friends that I went and played basketball with. That's what we did. Went and played basketball or went to the driving range to go hit golf balls around or went and go do this or went and go do that. And it just cut me down and I couldn't do anything. So I kind of stopped hanging out with those people. And I kind of, well, can't really say I became a curmudgeon, but after 10 years, after when I was about 38, 39, I really turned it down and started backing up and easing off because I don't know, it wasn't working out.
Mhm.
So I like to spend time by myself.
Yeah, I was a curmudgeon before my brain injury.
Well, it's okay. It kind of runs in my family, so
Hmm.
I figure it's okay for me to be a curmudgeon.
Well, I think that's all the questions that I had. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
I don't know. Don't give up. Don't give up. Believe in yourself. You can do it. No. Well, I don't. I feel like I didn't very well tie my injury into the second impact syndrome that I was talking about.
Okay.
And what I wanted to say about that is my injury lines up with what second impact syndrome is. Like the age lines up, the timeline before. Like I okay, the timeline before. It was it was either I think a Wednesday night. I was hanging out with my friends and we were just kind of fooling around, like doing some parkour or whatever, and I hit my head on a sign. I didn't really think about anything of it. It hurt. It's like, all right. So I hit my head again. I'm kind of accident prone, I guess. And then that weekend, it was Labor Day weekend, so we had school on Friday, and then we weren't gonna have school again till that Tuesday. And I went camping with my mother, and we rented some mountain bikes, and I don't know, we probably went for a hike or a ride or something in the morning, and then it was in the afternoon. I was just riding my bike around the campground and kind of fooling around like any 17-year-old would. And I remember I hit a jump and I just screwed up the landing or something, and I fell, and I probably bounced my head off a rock, but I had ripped up my arm a whole bunch, and I was probably a little more worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this, like, this kind of clicked to me. I was up all night. I was just like, I remember I was crying, I was sobbing. This was so terrible, but that's head injury.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that until later in life. That's complete head injury, like not being able to control your emotions like that. It totally dawned on me. I'm like, huh, okay, so the timeline the timeline fits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my brain swelled up. I think the doctors saw it as, okay, something caused this vessel to rupture, and then so the vessel ruptured and it caused all these problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did anybody look at, I mean, no one knows what my brain looked like before. I was a healthy 17-year-old. Did you go for an MRI when you were 17?
No.
Exactly. I think that's kind of my point.
Yeah.
So I mean, how does anybody know? The brain does wild things when it wants to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the my brain very well could have swelled up to cause this vessel to burst. I was lucky at the first because I went to the hospital here in Midcoast, Maine. It's called Penn Bay Medical Center. I went there and they did a CT scan, and the neurologist there put what is it, a stent? I
Mm-hmm.
think STENT.
Yes.
He put that they put one of those in the in my frontal skull, like top of my forehead hairline kind of placement. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe did volumes of good. I'm not a neurologist. I can't say yay or nay on them, but
Mm-hmm.
I believe it did. And then, I went on to losing my vision and my voice box and all
Mm-hmm.
that.
So, for those who have never heard of second impact syndrome, it happens when the brain swells rapidly shortly after a person suffers a second concussion before symptoms from an earlier concussion have subsided. The event is rare, but when it does happen, it is most often fatal.
That is correct. I've
Mhm.
read that, and you know what? Now that's a small paragraph.
Yeah,
Back in the 2000s when I was speaking about this, it was like one sentence.
yeah.
I have done a little more research on second impact syndrome, and it was only first noted in 1984. And it was noted. It wasn't like recorded like this is 100% of what happened. I think it was noted like maybe this is an issue of athletes that we don't know about.
Hmm.
And I mean, and this happened in 1996, which is, 12 years later, but I also live in Maine, and it was 1996. So that was the infancy of the internet.
Yeah.
So information sharing and all that hadn't really come to what it is today.
So, what you said you spoke about it in the early 2000s.
Yes.
You told me before we started recording that you did some public speaking to crowds about it.
Yeah, that like same idea, same thing. Like in high schools and the health classes, talked about um, we talked about second impact injury. We talked about concussions. The gentleman I spoke with, Scott, he was the CFO of the main integrated rehabs place, and he has been working with just uh, people with disabilities and people with different limb challenges and everything. So he had a lot of compensatory strategies
Mm-hmm.
and just like different tools that people would use to help compensate for left side or right side weakness or paraplegia,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. And so we tried to cover it all, and but we only spoke for about an hour and a half, so we couldn't really go into deep detail about this stuff. But we went across on him because if you remember in high school, I don't think we had much. I was not aware of brain injury or
Yeah, me either. The only thing that I knew about stroke before I had a stroke was when I was in like elementary school or middle school or something. I remember I was at lunch with some friends, and somebody said, "My aunt had a stroke, and she said that she smelt burnt toast before she had the stroke. If you smell burnt toast, that means you're having a stroke." So when I had my stroke,
I have phantom smells all the time.
yeah,
I have a lot of nerve damage, so
yeah, and I know phantom smells do happen during a stroke,
yeah.
but don't rely on that
Oh yeah, I
information
know.
because when I was
I try to stay rational about everything I hear.
yeah, yeah, when I had my stroke, I literally had the thought, I can't be having a stroke. I don't smell burnt toast.
I don't smell burnt toast. There you
Yeah,
go.
because that's information that I carried with me for the rest of my life. So don't be like me. Don't listen to your friends when you're like 8 years old
Yeah,
about stroke symptoms,
I,
stroke
th- I
signs.
think I'm aware of what like epilepsy was. I never I I don't recall having much knowledge of TBI, or
Mhm.
that wasn't something that was prevalent in my life at that time.
Yeah. And apparently when I was 17, I did know someone who had a TBI.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Um I mean, I still know him now. He's still a friend of mine. Um
Excellent.
but I learned about his brain injury more recently, even
Really?
though it happened in high school.
But I mean, there's a positive side to that. Like you probably understand it a lot more than you would have in high school. In high school, you'd
Mhm.
have been like, "Oh, that sucks. All right,"
Yeah.
and gone on with the day. But now you're like, "Oh my gosh, wow,
Yeah.
that's some real struggle."
Mhm.
Can't say I'm not happy with my life. I'm happy with who I am and what I put into life, but it's not where I wanted it to go.
Mhm.
But at the same time, was my life headed where I want to go? You know, I I
Mhm.
I can sit here all day and think about, the what ifs of life. And was I gonna be a good person? Was I gonna, fight the good fight? Was I gonna walk a righteous path? Or was I gonna be a jerk, a con artist? Was I gonna be a liar? Was I gonna,
Mhm.
I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah. For all you know, this was the best life option that
It could have been.
could have happened. Yeah, could have been. But we're in the good
But
timeline.
the way I look at it is it gave me a chance to like start over. Like, I mean, I miss who I was playing sports and everything, but it gave me a chance to start over and think about life and how I wanted. Because I mean, three weeks without being able to talk will make you think about stuff, you know.
Mhm.
And it gave me a chance to think about how I felt about life, and now I can find inspiration in everybody. I mean, probably one of the biggest inspirations in my life. There was when I was at the handicap ski program when I was like 18. There was a gentleman there. He was a triple amputee, and he had oh man, he had I'm sorry, he had visual what? He had visual issues. What's the word? I'm
Visual
drawing a
impairment.
There you go, visual
Yeah.
impairment. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
and he was doing the stand up. He was stand up skiing. He had guides there to help him see, and but he had prosthetics. He was doing stand up skiing. That was just like that was the moment that it hit me. You can do what you want. You just have to put your mind to it. It's all about mindset.
Hmm.
And like everything my mother had been telling me was coming true.
And I think that that is a great message to send
Yeah,
out to other brain injury survivors. That you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. You just can't give up.
right. You
Yeah.
may have to. I mean, success only happens there. Failure is a part of success. You can't
Hmm.
succeed without failure. You need the bad for the good. You need
Hmm.
the happy for the sad. I mean, it's kind of about balance.
Yeah.
And I mean, anything is possible if you chop it down into little steps. And I mean, if it's not working that day, just you have to understand the process, believe in the process. Things may not be working that day. That's just what life is now. You know, it
Hmm.
just some things don't work some days. So yesterday you could have been, you know, hitting the tens all day, but today you're hitting fours, you know.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
and
you can't give up.
isn't there that famous adage from who is it? Edison, Thomas Edison, where he failed in creating the light bulb so many times, but it only takes one success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the light bulb went on over his head. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, you can't invent something overnight. I mean, you can't build something overnight. Rome wasn't
Yeah.
built in a day.
Mhm.
Think of your body as Rome. It's not built in a day.
Yeah.
It's gonna take time, but
Yeah.
stick with it.
Exactly. So
And you'll
don't
get
let
there. Stick
failures
with it.
discourage you.
Right.
Learn from them and keep going.
Yeah. I mean, failure is just another word for failed attempt and learning.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
So
Every failure is a learning opportunity.
yes, it is. And if you look at it that way, you'll get further.
Right, well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Of course. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely.